Is my screen visible?
Yes, Prabha, it is.
All right, perfect. Thank you. Thanks everyone for joining this morning. Good morning. And today's webinar is presented by Samantha and Angel. I just want to do a quick intro of both of them. Samantha has many of you who've been on prior webinars know her well. She is the product manager for Pavillio and knows the product really well and has a lot of experience in the industry. Angel Neubauer is our billing manager, and she's been doing Medicaid and agency billing for many, many years and has a lot of experience. A lot of the content here is a result of her knowledge and experience doing billing, and a lot of her advice is from battle scars from having done billing for various services over the years. We have a packed agenda today, so I'm going to get started and do a few housekeeping items to cover right before we jump into the webinar. So those of you who are new to Cache and our webinars, all of our webinars are available on our website. You can go to the webinar link and you can find them. There's lots of good information. I encourage you to take a look at that. Second, recap of our last webinar. We gave an update on EVV in Minnesota. As you all are well aware, EVV is going live in December. But the FMSs, the Financial Management Service Organizations, 14 of them in the state of Minnesota, have actually gone live as of June 20th of last last month, and we are actually working with 7 of those agencies out of 14 in the states, and they're all using Cache. In fact, one of the largest agencies in the state with over 10,000 clients are now, they were with HHA, but now will be using Cache for EVV. And there's a lot of good content on that webinar. If you're still looking to get started with EVV, I encourage you to take a look at that. And frontline worker pay. And by the way, this is closing very soon. Applications are due by July 22nd. There is a lot of good information in our website as well as in these locations. Please take a look at that and complete this. Those that are out there working deserve to get paid more, and you have a couple more days to get this completed. Okay, coming to our webinar. The takeaways for this webinar fundamentally is really about how do you use Pavillio and its advanced features and the automation capabilities so that you can do billing better. Second, you're going to learn how to effectively rework the claims. And finally, all of this is so that you can get paid more and get paid faster. I see that there are a number of different audiences here. You've got executive directors, program managers, current Cache, legacy users, Pavillio users. So everyone here can benefit from this webinar, because ultimately this is about how do you run your agency and have the financial wherewithal to maximize reimbursements. So the agenda we have for the day is I'm going to cover a few things about billing stats and the realities of Medicaid billing, agency billing processes and best practices. Sam is going to jump in and do that. Billing features in Pavillio is something Sam is going to cover, and reworking of claims. With that, that should take up pretty much the whole hour. Hopefully we'll get all the content covered in the time allotted. So let's start with Medicaid billing statistics. I don't know if anyone, if you knew this, but Medicaid has 18% first-time denial rate, which means 18% of the claims that are sent for the first time are denied and have to be reworked. And believe it or not, this is 2.5 times higher than the commercial insurance payers, and that is an alarming number. 65% of these denied claims don't get reworked, which means 35% or a third of them don't get paid. And given the thin margins in social services, that can have a huge impact. On average, it takes over 2 months to receive payments on reworked or denied claims, and that is an average, and we've seen it taken even longer. And if you're working with MCOs, that is painful as a lot of MCOs are just not in the business of paying out claims right away. So you end up having to rework and take time to get paid. The average cost of reworking a claim is over $31, and which basically means if you sent the claim out the first time and it got paid, you don't incur this cost. If you have to work 100 claims, well, you can imagine what that's going to cost you in terms of labor, time, and the lost revenue. So keep that in mind every time you're trying to work claims. And a lot of our philosophies of building Pavillio had to do with the fact that we don't want you to have to rework claims. Sometimes reworking claims are inevitable, but if we can avoid it, that would have a huge impact on cash flow for you. So other billing realities. Sam, did you want to cover some of these? I thought I was covering, but I think you had these covered, so please jump in.
No, go ahead.
All right, other billing realities. Timely filing can vary from 3 months to a year, and that results in write-offs if not worked in a timely fashion. So remember that billing is hard, and we all know that, and there are many things that affect this. As I said, MCOs are not in the business of paying out, so MA payments do come in quicker. MCOs might take even longer, and reworking claims with MCOs are even harder. You may have a PCA service through MA and PCA service through UCare and Medica, and while it's the same service, there are different requirements. There are different billing requirements. There are requirements when you have multiple codes being used, and these things can confuse and make billing harder, and more denials can come through your system. Clearinghouses in between yourself and MCOs make it even harder. There are Cache and is one of the few companies that bill directly to MA and use clearinghouses only for MCOs. There are many other billing software that use clearinghouses exclusively, which means it complicates and makes denials more likely and delay in payments, because running through clearinghouses, if we can avoid it, we would too, but there are certain payers you just have to go through clearinghouses. So clearinghouses complicate things. If you're going directly to MA for payments, it actually makes it easier, and we have that direct connection built in. Delays in receiving authorizations also cause pain and frustrations for our billers. There are the delay in claim processing and payment beyond 30-day contractual agreements, and these are also some things that you see while contractually MCOs are supposed to pay claims within 30 days, they often don't. And if you don't, are you getting the interest payment on those claims? These are things to think about. Payers also make changes in systems, and as many of you are aware, UCare made a system change in December and January time period, and that caused a lot of headaches for a lot of our customers. We helped them work through many of these issues. We still have a couple of lingering issues there, but that too can affect billing and how you get paid. So with that, I'm going to jump into agency billing process and best practices, and Sam is going to cover this. Sam, take it over.
Yeah, hi, welcome everyone. As Prabha has shared, there are many grim realities of billing, and on top of that, you're competing with those slim margins. But there is hope, and this webinar we've based on questions that I've received from the support desk, as well as conversations with agency providers along the way. And we're here to share some of those billing best practices and processes to help you capture more of your revenue. So this is the typical claims process of an agency. We can walk through this here. You receive the SA, the caregiver performs the service, caregiver submits the timesheet, the claim is submitted to the payer, and payment is received. This is even more important than ever with the addition of EVV. And as Richard Branson said, never take your eyes off the cash flow, because it's the lifeblood of your business. So with that said, we'll dig deeper into some best practices. First of all, garbage in, garbage out, period. Good billing starts with good data, and having accurate information in the beginning significantly improves your odds of receiving payment. Having documented processes leads to more consistent outcomes. We know the realities of staff turnover, and having documented processes that are kept current allow for consistent claims processing no matter who's submitting the claims. Processing time outside of the norm is considered an exception. Following your agency's established processes will reduce the exceptions that you end up dealing with on the billing side. And having policies and enforcing them. Enforcing your policies allows you to follow your processes as documented and removes the chance of having to deal with these exceptions. And this is all done in an effort to reduce the first-time denials. Do you have metrics that you track for your agency? Ultimately, you manage what you measure. Establish billing KPIs, or key performance indicators, will help you keep a pulse on your agency. We've got some that we encourage you to consider and that we've seen be very successful for agencies to use to manage financial health. Focusing on reducing your first-time denials. As we learned earlier, there is a cost that goes along with reworking claims, both in staff time and in the likelihood that it ever will be paid. And claims should be reworked as soon as practical. You may be waiting on a service agreement or an UMPI number, but develop the practice of reviewing open claims and aging periodically to understand what's outstanding. And lastly, make sure to pay attention to timely filing. This deadline varies by payer and can range from 3 months to 12 months. They don't want to pay you if they don't have to, bottom line. So what kind of metrics should you track? Here are some KPIs that we would like you to consider. The first-time denial rate. By keeping track of your first-time denial rate, you can adjust your processes to correct the issues ahead of time, reducing your delay in payment by several weeks.
Sam, can I interrupt for just a second here? I just want to
Yes,
highlight a couple of things here. First time denial rate, as I said, it's 18% for Medicaid. In legacy cachet, that's our legacy product, we track that to be about 8%. And in Pavillio, that first time denial rate has dramatically dropped below 2%, and our goal is to get it under 1%. So this is the ultimate method of reducing denials and ultimately getting most of your reimbursements through. And tracking this metric is a great way for you to stay on top of it and recognize where some of the challenges are. Sorry, Sam, go ahead.
Thanks, Prabha. The bill to pay ratio by payer. So this goes back to collecting all of what you're billing. Pay attention to your aging. Look at your aging greater than 30 days. You can also look at this by payer to identify commonalities or concerns. And look at what's not yet been billed, the unbilled services. This is revenue that you can and should capture. So know what's outstanding and why. Take a look at your write-offs. They do tell a story. What are you writing off? Is it overuse of units, spend downs and family deductibles? Are there other issues that you can address through your processes to avoid future write-offs? So take a close look at your organization. Are you tracking any of these KPIs today? Do you monitor your AR over 30 days, 60 or 90 days? What do you have outstanding today? Are you reactive or proactive in your financial management approach? Having worked with agencies over many years, I've seen several agencies take a look at the deposit in the bank account, and if it's about what they expect, then it's okay. If the payment is not what they expect, then they investigate. This is a reactive approach. To be proactive, monitor the metrics. There are many bits and pieces to billing, and each play a role. How many clients? How many hours did the staff work? Were there essay changes? But by paying attention to your KPIs, you can see the issues ahead of time and be more proactive in your financial management. What about spend downs? Do you collect your spend downs regularly? Or those pesky family deductibles or other patient responsibilities? Do you track them and invoice the clients timely? What could you do better? And to answer that question, we have some fundamental characteristics of a good billing department. And this again starts with documented processes. As we learned, good billing starts with good data. The success of your agency starts long before you actually send the claims. And first, you need to set up the essays and enter accurate client and employee data in a timely fashion. Prevention is better than the cure. Having the correct information up front is much easier and less time-consuming than correcting denied claims after the fact. We briefly discussed the exceptions and having documented processes to handle them. So what do you do if you're waiting on an employee UMPI, or what if the client's SA is expired and you don't yet have the new one? You'll want to have the exceptions outlined and have processes documented for staff to follow. This ultimately reduces the risk of denied claims. Your agency KPIs should be tracked and reviewed each month. This allows for gentle course correction when you see an issue rather than having to make that sharp turn to adjust. And lastly, reviewing the billing and time records weekly. You will actively be able to address failed records or rework denied claims quickly, and by monitoring the claims with patient responsibility and writing off claims you know you can't collect on, you'll keep current with the claims and be able to address issues more quickly. And we're excited to show you how Pavillio can help with all of this. Running an agency is daunting, managing staff is daunting, so how can Pavillio help? Pavillio processes over $30 million each month. And what makes Pavillio better than others? So we have here the comparison chart. Pavillio was built with automation and the smarts to be able to help your agency be successful. We've created enforced workflows to think on your behalf, and we've enabled automation where possible to eliminate human error. Legacy and other platforms were built on running reports to get information out, and Pavillio was built with the intent to see information in the user interface. Many of the features we're going to go over throughout the rest of the presentation, but we've got the list here for you. We talked a bit about the typical billing process, but we've added a few steps to enhance the explanation, and now we're going to take a deeper look at each of these areas and see how Pavillio can help you. So good billing starts with good data. Pavillio has field level validations that include the length of the MA number, the date of birth, social security number, and employee UMPI, just to name a few. To collect accurate time records, the client and employee need to be connected. The client would need to have the care delivery established, and the employee needs to have a pay rate set up for the individual service line in order to clock time. And in addition, Pavillio will stop the addition of duplicate clients and employees with the same email address. So this helps prevent the duplicates from being added in the system and avoids confusion down the road. The client service agreement is very important. This is, after all, the brains of service delivery. So without the SA, employees wouldn't be able to clock in. Within Pavillio, you can set up the appropriate service lines and service codes, which are defined at the system level. If the state rate sheet has a billing rate defined, we establish this in Pavillio along with a series of other configurations. Maintaining this data is done by Cache, so you don't have to worry about updating each of the rates as the COLA increases come or other things fluctuate. The fixed rates allow us to take care of that for you. And when the SA is established, there's a priority logic that's built in where the units are applied to each service line. For example, if a client has PCA, T1019, and extended care, you as the agency can set up 2 hours a day to apply toward T1019, and any of the remaining time will automatically go to the extended care line. And this removes the manual process of having to transfer the units over to the other line or moving them back and forth as the staff clock in.
And this is also becomes much more important with EDV because the time is recorded by the caregiver, and they should not have to worry about whether it's extended time or normal time, and the biller then doesn't have to think about how do I assign these units and which line item do I assign the units, and because the caregivers are entering the time, the system automatically assigns it, and the biller doesn't have to touch it, and the system will automatically determine which units to assign to which line item based on the payer and their requirements for extended unit calculation.
Yes, thanks. Pavillio also has the ability to view units in detail. This is a relatively new feature for us, but you can actually see the breakdown of all the units, all the way from the caregiver submitted time through what's been billed. And then you're able to accurately plan with the caregiver to say how many hours are remaining as of such a date.
And I think it's also important to point out that in the world of EVV, time is recorded on a daily basis. In the timesheet world, you got a timesheet every 2 weeks. When the time is recorded on a daily basis, but billed on a biweekly basis, during the period when the billing is not being computed, we have a concept called estimated consumed units, which keeps track of units being used so that if a service agreement is towards the last 30, 40 units and there is consumption on a daily basis, you don't want to run out of units and allow the caregiver to continue working, which means if that happens, you'll have to pay the caregiver and you cannot collect on the reimbursements. So our estimated consumed units keeps accurate track on a daily basis, in fact, on every transaction basis, so that you don't overspend the units. And to track all of this, we've built and expanded our unit utilization and the detailed unit utilization reporting so that you can have that accurate information and prevent caregivers from using the service agreements.
Yes. And lastly here, I'm sure many of you were nodding along when we had discussed, not having a service agreement, as we previously talked about. But before you get the official service agreement, the caregiver still needs to clock in. So you may have gotten word from the county that, it is coming. How do you enter it into the system and ensure that the caregiver can still clock time? So you do that in Pavillio by adding an interim essay, where the caregiver is able to record time against it, and Pavillio will hold all of these records until the actual essay is received and made active within the system. And then once it's added, the claims will automatically revalidate and will go out to the payer. So this allows service to continue, the care to be provided, and these claims don't end up denied and have to be fixed at the end. So once all of the information has been entered, and the caregiver is going to work with the client, Pavillio has a number of things to assist you. The employee can clock in only to authorized services. So this means that the connection has been made with the client has an active service agreement, the employee has a pay rate for that specific line, and employees have either a specific pay rate or they can have an any service pay rate. But if an employee has a specific pay rate, say for example, the client has both PCA service and respite, maybe one caregiver works only PCA and another respite, you can designate that within the system. The client has to be MA eligible, and Pavillio does eligibility checks at the start of each month and a weekly verification. And the employee cannot be on the OIG list. So this list is updated each month when the Office of Inspector General updates the list, and employee status will automatically be changed to OIG suspended in Pavillio, and the employee will not be able to clock time. If there are no units available, employees will not be able to start a visit. There are configurations in the system that will warn the user when starting a visit if the units are reaching a certain threshold, and will not allow time submission after the user has reached a threshold, allowing you as the agency more control over tracking utilization, resulting in cleaner billing and less first-time denials. Lastly, the clock in and clock out times are rounded for billing, and this means that if the caregiver starts a visit and only works for 6 minutes, this is not billable time because it's less than half of the 15-minute unit. If the caregiver works 8 minutes, Pavillio considers this record a valid billing record and 1 unit will be sent to the payer. So talking about system validations, you may be seeing a trend here. Up to this point, no biller has been involved, and all of these things we've discussed impact accurate and timely billing. And with each step, there are additional validations to ensure the service is available and will be billable after the care has been provided. The caregiver submitting the visit record is no different. Time can be entered manually or in real time, and if entered manually, the caregiver is able to enter up to 7 days at a time. Pavillio again checks for the available units when that record is submitted. Pavillio checks for overlapping time to make sure you're in compliance and avoid future takebacks. A few additional features here, the forced clock out. If a caregiver forgets to end the visit, you have a configuration within Pavillio where you can force a clock out. And when those records go into billing, you'll be alerted that they were a forced clock out record and the visit should be edited prior to billing. Schedules are not required, but if the visit is scheduled, you'll be able to see what caregivers started their visit late. And if any visit records are incorrect, the time can be rejected by the client or representative or by the agency for the employee to correct. Having accurate time when you start the billing process is key to successful outcomes. And the system validations continue. After the caregiver submits the time, the client or rep approves it, and you as the agency will go in to finalize those records. And this validation is done in the approve visits or approve attendance screen in the first. Do you have something you want to add, Prabha?
I'm sorry, no, go ahead. I'm
Okay.
talking to myself.
In the first card, you'll come to the warning card. There are several warnings that Pavillio displays to make sure that you know which items to look at prior to finalizing the visits. You'll see the forced clock out visits, invalid time records, and these visits are less than 7 minutes and are not billable. And you'll also see whether the client override was turned on or not. There are many validations that are able to be skipped with the client override turned on. So you always want to check those to make sure that the units are available, the client is eligible when you see that warning. You can also see units available right from the pending approvals card prior to finalizing. When you want to check to be sure there are enough units, you can do that right in the approve visit screen.
Just a thought there. While unit information is available, the system is constantly tracking unit utilization. So the approval screen has two purposes. One is to have a operational or a process-oriented approval function, because when employees clock time, the agency still has to finally approve, and the agency is held accountable for that. So therefore, the approval screen is available. Second, there are things that require human intervention and some human judgment to be applied. For example, employee clocked in at a location and wasn't supposed to, it's outside of the geofence, and somebody has to make a determination as to if that's correct or not. Force invalid, if you change the time on a visit record, you need to know about it, and if it happens often, you may, as the agency, have a conversation with the employee. And so these are just various ways to, again, ensure that the data is accurate before a claim is actually created. And in legacy, as well as other systems, the challenge is that much of this decision making is left up to the end user, and therefore there's potential for errors. Whereas in Pavillio, we categorize the areas that need to be looked at. All the other records that don't need to be looked at can flow through. And then there are system controlled events where it doesn't even get past this point because the system has caught it. All of this is happening in real time behind the scenes. And again, all in the interest of cleansing the data so that by the time it gets to the biller to process billing, the chances that it's accurate are much greater. Thus, the 2% or less than 2% first time denial rate. Go ahead, Sam.
On the cleansing of the data, if you find the records that are incorrect and need to be edited, you can make those edits right from the approved visits as well and make notes as to why you made the changes. And once you verified that all the visits are correct and the records are finalized, it goes through another series of validations, and Pavillio uses a set of rules to combine and split claims, apply procedure codes using the auto priority, and prepare the records for the cleanest possible billing. And at this time, all of the good records go into the ready card, and any records with issues will go into the failed card. So when entering the claims management area, the failed and ready cards are the first two that you see. There are 45 rules that determine whether or not the records fail or go to ready. And at this point, these are still time records. They're not considered claims until they're sent out to the payer. In the failed card, the failure reason will display below the record. In the help area, there are many failed reasons and how you go about correcting them. And just to note here, the help area in Pavillio has a lot of helpful hints, and we'll reference that a little further along in this presentation as well, but it's a good thing to check out. But an example, in the example here, the claim already exists for this date, and that means that you've likely already billed out time for another caregiver for that same client in that same day, and you'll need to locate the other claim, move it to the workbench, and replace it. And at that time, Pavillio will combine the two records and you can send them to the payer. Also in the failed card, you'll see parked records. Parked always means that the units are exceeded. And this is either the total balance of the SA is exceeded, or you can set the max hours per day. And if that's exceeded, they will also be parked. So working the parked and failed records before sending the claims to the payer ultimately helps prevent those first-time denials.
And Sam, would you say that monitoring and working the fail card is just a good practice just to stay on top of visit records and how they move through the system?
Yes, as with all of the cards here, it's really important that you're checking these often, making sure that you're staying up to date. Otherwise, if you come in and you've got many, many records, it's much more overwhelming. So staying on top of it is key.
Okay.
So once you've corrected these issues, revalidating the claims is easy. There are several things, making changes to the client service agreement or MA number, adding the employee MP will revalidate those claims, and then there's no action needed from your end. Otherwise, you can revalidate right from the failed card. And once all the claims are in the ready card, you're ready to bill. It's the one-click billing. You select your record, hit send to payer. One click and it's done. The system will prepare the batches and send out the claims per the payer's requirements. And there are a lot that goes on behind the scenes here to allow for just that one click. And Prabha, I think you said there were 15 or 20 required in the Cache Legacy platform to get this done?
Yeah, so in Legacy, there was a variety of things you had to do, whether you were working in scheduler, whether you were selecting records, whether you were looking at various statuses. All of that had to be manual. In fact, to bill in Legacy, it took a while for billers to learn how to use Legacy to bill. But what we've done is we've taken all of those steps and automated them so that the system does all that work and avoids or prevents the human error factor. For example, if you are trying to bill for a certain a billing period, but you forget in Legacy to go pull all the records from prior billing periods, then you might have claims that should go out but didn't go out. Whereas in Pavillio, that's not the case. If the claims are in the ready card, then they're all ready to go out and you're not going to miss claims, miss sending out claims. And also the automation, that we call it one-click automation because in Legacy and in other systems, you have to first go create a batch file, take the batch file and upload it to Waystar or some other a clearinghouse, and all that is manual. And I know in Legacy, even experienced billers that we have would accidentally upload the batch to the wrong payer. And these are things that are now taken out of the equation, and the human element is removed, and now the system does this all on its own, and the chance of error is greatly reduced. So that one-click automation handles all of this so that the biller doesn't have to worry about it. The biller is just focused on, am I billing everything out? All the are all the claims going out and are they going to get paid, and not worry about some of the other things that systems are good at handling, which is checking rules, following rules, keeping it consistent every time. And the great thing is we're adding more and more rules so that it simplifies what the biller's function is. The biller can work on the difficult claims that are troublesome, or a payer that is having some issues with the way we are sending claims, or now they're working on much more complex issues versus some of the menial tasks which the system is very capable of handling.
Yes, and monitoring the outgoing claims is also easy in Pavillio. The claim status is displayed throughout the process to keep you updated. When a claim is sent, it will be in sent status until it reaches the payer, at which point the file will either be accepted or rejected, and you're apprised along the way. And pending status here means that the file has reached the payer, but the payer has not yet adjudicated the claim or provided any status. So the claims, if the payer provides a status, which Minnesota DHS does, will display then either a will pay, will deny, or will partially pay. So you can right away address any will deny claims by moving them to the Workbench and correcting the issues to resubmit quickly without further delay. And then you can see your will pay or will partially pay, so you know what to expect when the payment comes in. You can also view the claims by service line, by date range, by payer, by dollar value, or by client and employee to have a clear picture of what you've billed. So if you want to search out a particular situation for, say, one client, you can look at 1 month for one client, or you can look at 1 month for all clients. Many searchable options there.
And so just another couple of things that we have changed in Pavillio compared to Legacy, and Angel is very familiar with this. We would generate a submission report every time there was a billing that was performed. And the submission report was a detail of everything that was submitted. Well, there was a print function. Somebody printed it out and created a document. Seldom got looked at, and we killed a lot of trees doing it. But ultimately, that same data can be queried easily by the biller and anybody else in the organization. So if I'm running the 245D program and I want to see how much billing went out for this this month of this 2-week period, I can go look at that and I know what's happening. I don't need to print reports out, and I don't need a submission report to determine what was submitted. The system is already tracking that. All of that information is available within the UI, and the biller is now not burdened with, okay, I got to generate 4 different reports and send it to the 4 different departments based on what I did today. This is about self-service. People can go in and look at it. If they have a question about a particular client or an employee, they can do the search and find it and have the necessary information at their fingertips. And that is the simplification of the claims area, so that the necessary people can get the data as quickly as possible.
And once the remit comes back, the claims will move then from the claims card into the claims denied or claims final, depending on the claim. Pavillio automatically applies payment for the records that the system can match based on the claim number. And to see the remits, we have a remits tab right in the claims management area. You can generate and view the PDF within the remit, or the PDF of the remit right in that screen. And any line items that have a variance between what was billed and what was paid will be highlighted in red for you. So here's an example of a remit, and you can see that there's approximately $33,000 that was not paid out of a $770,000 billed.
And looking at remits is, most of the time it is not, you don't really have to look at the remit if the system is already doing all that work for you, because you can look at all the claims that haven't been paid or have been denied within the UI. But if you needed to look at the remit, you have access to the remit.
Yes, correct. All right, and when you do have denied claims that need to be reworked, you can do this right from the Workbench. Denied or partially paid and fully paid claims can be moved to the Workbench and be fixed and resent to the payer. In the Workbench, you can do things like change the service agreement, change the service code, edit the client or employee information, adjust the hours so they're accurate. And maybe the client used all of their T1019 units and you need to move the record to the extended care. This can be done using the Change SA option right from the Workbench. In the Workbench, you can also replace claims, resubmit claims, or void claims for all payers. There's no separate step for MCO billing. You'll be able to see the denial and adjustment codes right in the Workbench, so you know the best way to fix the claims. And based on these codes, Pavillio will also highlight the appropriate action buttons for you. So this eliminates the potential user errors, and like Prabha said before, it really allows the billing team, the human billers, to take more complex situations and work on those. And Pavillio will help to do the easy ones and kind of filter out those ones that can just easily be resent. All claims have a claim notes option. So adding your claim notes really helps your team just be aware of the history of the claim, what you've tried to do to get the claim paid. The claim notes are like a post-it note for your claims. So this displays who made the note and when. And we've got some best practices for reworking claims.
So just a additional comment on the claim notes. This is a really valuable function. As many of you know, Cache has a team of billers that do billing for agencies, and when our billers are working on claims, they're constantly keeping track of what they did with the claim. Hey, I added these units. I'm waiting for a service agreement. I deleted a line. So all of these notes that go with that claim are maintained within the system, so that 3 years from now, and you go back and you're trying to determine, why did I bill it this way versus that way? All that information is available in claim notes. This is you get claim notes in sort of sophisticated billing systems in hospitals, but legacy Cache had it, and Pavillio has a much more integrated version of it that really helps billers be better at keeping track of information within the system. Sorry, Sam, go ahead.
Jumping into some best practices for reworking claims, and this came from our billing team, and some of the commonly asked questions that we get here. Only claims that you're working on should be moved to the Workbench. Once they're in the Workbench, the only options are to resubmit, replace, void, or write off. You can't simply put the claim back where it had been before. So really making sure you're being accurate in what you're moving and only moving the things that you intend to work on. When working a claim, you'll want to move all associated claims for that client or service line from the denied or final card, so they can all be sent at the same time. To make edits to the claim, you'll want to add or remove the hours first before changing the service agreement. And using the claim notes is a really great way to document. So remember to make your notes. Like as Prabha said, years down the road, you go back and want to try and understand why you did what you did. And I don't know about the rest of you, but I can't remember what happened yesterday in most cases. So having those notes is very important. So here's the view from the Workbench. This illustrates the buttons that are illuminated for the actions available based on 3 things: the service, the payer, and the denial or adjustment codes that are on the claim. There's a rules engine within the system that determines these options, and in other systems, this is left to the biller to figure out.
Yeah, so
Anything you want to add? Yeah.
Yeah, so this is when we built Pavillio, one of the things that we looked at was there's variations in how denial codes are handled. Depending on who the payer is, depending on the denial code, and depending on the service line, there is a different set of actions, and a lot of our internal billers in legacy had to be taught and had to remember what to do based on the denial code and remember, oh yeah, for UCare, I have to do this. Oh no, for MA, I need to do this differently. And those are rules that they are consistent, but then several rules. And we took all those rules, put them in a rules engine, and as the denial codes came across on a denial, the system will then say, here are the options you have. And this way it takes out the learning process required for a biller and simplifies billing so that even someone who's not a very experienced biller will know, okay, I'm going to do a particular type of denial, and since it's MA, I don't even have to worry about the fact that there's a different rule for that. The system will manage that. So this rules engine will continue to grow as new information is uh, added because payers make changes and programs, and CFSS is coming, and there are going to be new rules associated with how claims are handled for CFSS, and there are new transportation codes that are coming. Well, how are those to be handled? Waiver Reimagined came along, and a lot of codes for 245D and how things are handled changed. All these things are built into the system so that the biller does not have to remember how to handle it, and the system handles it for you.
Okay, we have a few other billing related functions. Manual payments can be posted for out-of-system claims or for miscellaneous payments. And this can be done in the claims card, the claims denied or claims final, and posting these and keeping them up to date just helps keep the system as accurate as possible. We discussed the override feature a little bit earlier. There are many validations that can be skipped when this is turned on. This is located in the client profile. There's a list of areas or a list of these overrides in the help area for your reference, but we do have a list here for you too. An example of this is if the client is out of units, having the override turned on will still allow the employee to clock time, or if the client is ineligible, will still allow the employee to clock time. So really making sure that you're paying attention to the override is really important. And using the service history for diagnostics. The service history is a very powerful tool. When I'm digging into questions about why an employee can't clock in, I often use service history. I can search both client and employee, either together or separately, during that period of time to see the full picture of what happened with those visits, what was added, what's been deleted. And this also displays the status of the time record and the claim record associated with those visits. This just helps paint the full picture to decipher these issues.
Yeah, so just a little more detail on service history. Time record is the visit information, it's the clock in time, and the claim register. And the claim register status is what happens when that time record is now gone through a lot of validation and rules and processes to combine and to split, etc., and now goes to the claim register. So being able to track what happened to the visit record and how that translated into a claim record, and being able to see that in service history helps the support desk answer questions. And a lot of this was as a result of questions we got from you on how to use the system and some issues that you may have had. And I build this out, and I don't know why the payroll didn't come through, or I know that this person recorded time, but I don't see it in the billing report. So to diagnose a lot of that, this is a very powerful tool that helps you get down to the record level, visit level, and claim level information so that you can find and fix issues. A lot of times it is the system is working as designed, and we just need to show people how to use it.
Yes. And we also have reporting. So The analytics tool will help you manage those KPIs we talked about and keep a better grasp on your billing. The system was designed to have the visibility from the UI, but for other questions that you may have that aren't in there or not easily visible in the UI, we do have a list of billing reports. As you can see, we've got the aging and unbilled that we talked about regarding the KPIs. But this is for you to have the information right at your fingertips. So to conclude here, billing
Sam,
is hard.
Um,
Yeah, go ahead.
yeah, can I pause you for a second? We have a few minutes here. I just want to make sure that if you have questions, please enter those questions in the questions section under the WebEx panel. There have been some really good questions, and Bill has been answering those. So if you've got questions, please put them through here in the next few minutes so that we can answer them as Sam continues to wrap up the webinar. Go ahead, Sam.
All right, so to conclude, we've got billing is hard. It's frustrating. We all want the claims to be paid, but it's made easier with Pavillio. Billing starts long before you actually click the send to payer. Having the good data in right away, working through the process makes the send to payer and receiving payment piece much easier. You manage what you measure. Use those KPIs to track your financial health. And reworking is simple in Pavillio. So you're well on your way to getting paid more and getting paid faster. As always, we welcome your feedback. We create these presentations based on the questions that you have. So please, like Prabha said, send in your questions. If you have thoughts on future webinars or things that you feel like we've missed here, we'd be happy to reach out on those as well. And with that, I'll hand it back to Prabha.
Great, thank you, Sam. Sorry for all my interruptions as you were going through stuff. A lot of good content. I want to highlight a few questions that have come through here for the benefit of everybody on the call. I'm going to start with one of the questions at the bottom of the list here. Jody asked a question. Is the client eligibility report something new to the system? And the client, the differences report. So there is an eligibility report that shows what happened, what was the eligibility before and what is the eligibility now. So if someone went from a PMAP to MA or MA to a PMAP or from UCare to Medica, the system generates a differences report so that you can act on the change in payer before you don't get paid, because they will still show up as eligible, but the payer has changed. So this is a feature, Jody, that we added. It's several months back, but yes, it is in the analytics report. And Jody, your follow-on question for that is, does the report show whether you went from one waiver to another waiver? It doesn't show if it went from one waiver to another waiver. That's actually a good question. It does show that you are eligible for a new waiver. It doesn't, I don't think we have that today. Bill, if you know that, know the answer to the question, please pipe in. But that is a good idea, and maybe we should add that as a function so that when it does switch, we can switch it. Bill, you've been answering some of these questions. If there are ones that you want to highlight, please jump in.
Sure. There's been a couple of other questions, somewhat centered around, EVV. There was one question about, if a client is not eligible and can't clock time for EVV, how does that get handled? In that circumstance, the employee is able to enter the time later manually if that client's eligibility does get restored. And so in that circumstance, that can be done. There was another question about the sending MCO claims. And just to clarify, Pavillio sends all of our MCO claims through Availity. There's no additional cost to that. That's part of your Pavillio subscription. And by default, we send everything electronically. We don't do any, manual claim entry. So, we have a connection set up with Availity so that any MCO claims for any payer will all get sent out electronically. Those are the main ones that want to highlight.
Okay, very good. Lots of good questions, and hopefully you found this webinar to be useful. We thank you for your time, and there is a questionnaire right after the webinar. Please provide us your feedback so that we can improve these presentations and bring more content to you that helps you run your agency better and utilize Pavillio to the fullest. Thanks everyone, and have a great day. This concludes our webinar.